We're here today to review the proper way to use and install push-to-connect fittings. There's three important factors when using push-to-connect fittings. The first is tube preparation, the second is tube insertion, and the third is disconnecting the tube. With tube preparation, the most important factors are to use a good tube cutter. And here I have several styles. I have basically a little inline tube cutter. I have more your shop style tube cutter, and cutters like this, like wireman's cutters, pocket knives, those are things you do not want to use. So I would recommend using a good tube cutter. When preparing the tube, and I'm going to cut a couple different styles of tube. When you cut the tube, you want to be able to make sure that you have a nice square cut, that the tube stays round, and that there's no burrs up around the tube itself. Okay? And then just double check to make sure that the ID and the OD is clean. If you were to use other cutters, like say these wireman cutters, and you were to cut that thing, you could see all the rough edges around there. All that's going to prohibit you from being able to insert the fitting properly, or insert the tube properly into the fitting. Okay, and it may even do damage to your seal when you do insert it. So I highly recommend using a quality tube cutter. Okay. Another thing you also want to do is to make sure that you get a nice square cut. If you cut at a real sharp angle, then part of your tube is going to be sealing and part of it's not. So you really want to pay attention when you cut the tube. Most fittings will accept somewhat of a bias cut, maybe a 10 to 20 degree angle, but other than that you want to be pretty straight. When you insert the tube into the fitting, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. So typically on most push-to-connect style fittings, the tube is going to be inserted about 7/8 of an inch into the fitting. So as you're inserting, you want to think about that. While you're inserting, you want to make sure that you give it a little bit of a twist, maybe like a clockwise twist as you're pushing through. Okay? The next thing you would want to do is you typically are going to have two stops. You're going to have the O-ring that you need to pass through, and then you need to bottom the tube out. So you're going to feel resistance when you first push it in there. That's the first stop. That's your seal. You need to keep pushing in again until you reach the bottom. Okay? A good rule of thumb is to estimate the roughly 7/8 of an inch from the end of the tube. So that way when you put it in and you push in, that you know that you have the right depth. The key to disconnecting is being able to hold the collet down tight. You want to make sure that that collet is up against the body before you try to pull the tube out. If you try to pull it out here, it's never going to come out. That collet has to be up against the body face and then pull the tube out. Alrighty? In some cases, doing a clockwise or counterclockwise twist, the tube will come out even easier. When you're in tight spots, other places you could use is an open end wrench. You could push that in around the tube itself, and you can use your thumb to hold that collet down, and then at the same time with your hand pull the tube out. That may take a little bit of practice, but it is a very easy way to get your tube to release. Helpful hints, again, are the wrench, but also to make sure that you visually see that that collar is up against the fitting. A few features that Alkon has over other fittings is we have a deeper insertion depth. So what that allows you to do is have a greater bias cut on your tube. We also have a floating tube support, if you can see that in there. And what that does is it's self-centering, so it will center on your sealing device or your O-ring, whatever you're using. And also it's a longer tube sport. You can see how these hang out the end of the fitting. What that does is it supports the ID of the tubing at a much greater length, which allows a greater side load without leaking. Also, Alkon makes a large variety of push-to-connect fittings with temperatures ranging from -40 to +400. And in some cases, under the cab, in the truck, or in certain environments, you're going to need that temperature range.